This woman was waiting at a red light while the man next to her was about to run the light. When the driver noticed, he swerved violently. The car lost control in an instant and crashed towards the woman. The woman was already 10 months pregnant and about to give birth. Facing this sudden danger, she chose to protect her child. Just as she turned around, the car crashed into her. Although the woman was knocked unconscious and bleeding, she still used her last ounce of strength to call out for help. The woman was quickly taken to the hospital, but she was in critical condition and could only save one of her children. Without hesitation, the woman chose to save her child, and after seeing her child safely born, she closed her eyes forever. Jimin and her husband Jaeho met at university. They were one of those couples who fell in love at first sight. After 7 years together, they finally got married. Jimin soon became pregnant. Her husband was so excited when he heard the news that he didn't know what to do. But just as the baby was about to be born, Jimin was involved in a car accident. It is said that if you are too attached to someone after death, their ghost will remain on Earth and not be reincarnated. Jimin became a ghost and stayed by her daughter Lucy's side for 5 whole years, watching her grow up little by little. Even though her husband found a stepmother for their daughter, Jimin didn't get angry. She just hoped that her daughter would be happy every day. But heaven did not grant her wish. When her daughter turned 5, an accident still happened. That day, Lucy picked up a plug with water in it and tried to plug it into the socket. The young girl didn't know how dangerous it was. Jimin watched as disaster was about to strike and quickly ran over to stop her. But she couldn't even grab her daughter's hand. Luckily, stepmother Hyan arrived in time to prevent the tragedy. Hyan hugged the child and went to breakfast, while Jimin was already shaking with fear. On the way to school, Jimin kept blaming Hyan for not putting the water next to the child. But Hyan couldn't hear a word she said. She even passed right through her. Although Jimin was a little disappointed, she was instantly happy to be able to accompany her daughter. She caught up with her daughter and kept nagging her. The sun outside was so bright that it blinded the child. At this, Jimin hurriedly reached out her hand to block the sun for her daughter, but the sun passed right through her palm. Lucy threw herself into the arms of her stepmother. Jimin felt a sense of loss. After all, she was just a ghost, because apart from seeing her daughter every day, she could do nothing else. Jimin lived in a funeral home. It was home to all the restless spirits. In charge of managing the ghosts was June. Although she looked fierce on the surface, she had a kind heart. She knew that the spirits who stayed here were all loyal and kind. They only wanted to do something for their loved ones before they could be reincarnated. So whenever the heavens send someone to hurry them along, June would rather take the punishment herself than speak unfairly for these ghosts, and try to get them to stay on Earth a little longer. This day is Jimin's death anniversary. Every year on this day, her parents would come to the temple to pray for her. They believed that good people would be rewarded in the end. Their daughter had done good deeds her whole life and shouldn't just leave so hastily. The father stroked Jimin's photo and couldn't help but cry. He believed that his daughter could hear his call, but her mother didn't think it was necessary to think about her daughter. She was the one who was unfilial by leaving before us. Her mother told her father to pack his things and prepare to go home, but she ran to the bathroom. Her mother turned on the tap directly, but how could the sound of the rushing water cover her crying? In fact, her mother loved her daughter more and missed her daughter more. She just didn't want to write it all on her face. Only when no one was around could she cry so unrestrainedly. Jimin really wanted to comfort her mother, but she was powerless. Today is Jimin's death anniversary and also the child's birthday. But for 5 whole years, Jaeho, as the father, has never once spent a birthday with his daughter, because every time this day comes, he will remember the image of his wife sacrificing her life to save her child. That scene lingers in his mind. Jaeho finished his work early in the day, but he didn't dare go home. He was prepared to spend the night in the dormitory. Every year on this day, Jimin stays up all night with her daughter. On this day, the stepmother prepares a cake for Lucy, but Lucy refuses to eat it no matter what. When she asks if she can eat it when her father returns, Lucy happily nods, but they wait until late at night, and Jaeho still hasn't returned. Jaeho doesn't forget his daughter's birthday. He just doesn't want to face this special day, because today is also the anniversary of his ex-wife Jimin's death. 5 years ago, in the car accident, Jimin desperately protected the child in her womb. In the operating room, he also agreed to save the child first, and the birth of his daughter was the continuation of Jimin's life. Although 5 years have passed, Jaeho still weeps whenever he thinks about it. Jaeho stayed in the dormitory until 2 a.m. Before returning home, he walked into his daughter's room, gently stroked her face, and kept saying happy birthday over and over again. But his blessings were full of sadness and thoughts of his wife. But he didn't know that his wife's ghost had been with him for 5 whole years. Jimin curled up on the floor and spent the night there. When dawn broke, she felt a figure leave the room. Jimin chased it into the living room and found that the ghost was hiding in her daughter's toys. She scolded the ghost loudly, telling it to stay away from the house, because children's chi is weak. If the ghost stayed here every day, it would suck all the children's young energy away. But the earth spirit told her, if you know this, why do you still stay by the child's side every day? Even if I don't suck the child's young energy, you will still suck her yang energy away. After the earth spirit finished speaking, It laughed maniacally and left. Jimin couldn't believe it was true. He just wanted to grow up with his child. He never meant to harm her. At this time, his daughter walked out of the bedroom. Jimin greeted his daughter to himself. Every time, Lucy would pass through Jimin's body at this time, but today she bypassed Jimin. Jimin saw this and immediately felt something was wrong. Could it be true, like the bound spirit said, that her daughter could really see ghosts? Jimin tried calling her daughter's name. Unexpectedly, Lucy answered. This was the last thing Jimin wanted to see, although she had fantasized many times about the day she could be reunited with her daughter. After all, ghosts and humans have different paths. The fact that Lucy can now see ghosts means that her luck is already very bad. Jimin found Jun and asked if there was any way to remedy the situation. Jun said that the best option was for you to leave your daughter now. Otherwise, other lonely ghosts and spirits will see you by Lucy's side and think that you are absorbing her positive energy. The child is still young and cannot distinguish between humans and ghosts, so the longer you stay by her side, the more dangerous it is for her. Jimin had never thought that because of her selfishness, she almost harmed her child. She went to the kindergarten to say goodbye to her daughter one last time, then she was going to be reincarnated. But by then, Lucy had already been called out by a ghost. When the teacher discovered it, Lucy had been missing for more than an hour. The teachers searched upstairs and downstairs, but they couldn't find Lucy anywhere. Jimin knew from the teacher's conversation that her daughter had disappeared. Anxious, she also started looking around. Unintentionally, she found a ghost crawling out of the refrigerator. Jimin crawled into the refrigerator and sure enough, she found her daughter. By then, the child had already become unconscious from the cold. Jimin tried to reach out and hug her daughter, but her hands could not touch her body. Jimin ran outside to ask the teachers for help, but no one could see her. She had to go back into the refrigerator again and again, calling her daughter's name. It seemed that Lucy, in a coma, sensed her mother's call. She kicked open the refrigerator door and was finally rescued. With the help of the teachers, the child was taken to the ambulance. Thanks to the timely rescue, the child quickly got out of danger. Seeing Jaeho's anxious and desperate appearance, Jimin fell into deep self-blame. She sat on the ground and kept saying sorry. Jimin also wanted to look at her daughter a few more times before leaving, but every time she was reluctant to do so. After this incident, she had to leave her daughter's side. The pedestrians on the road were hurrying back and forth. No one would notice this sad ghost. Jimin saw a family of 3 laughing and talking to each other. She felt more and more the injustice of the world. She looked up to the sky and asked what she had done wrong. Why couldn't she even make this small request come true? However, no one could answer her question. At that moment, snowflakes began to fall from the sky. Jimin wanted to reach out and catch one. However, the snowflake passed through her palm. This seemed to remind her that you are only a ghost. Everything in the world is a luxury for you. Jimin recalled the past 5 years and angrily sat on the ground, complaining about the injustice of the world. It seemed as if the heavens had heard him. Suddenly, there was a strong wind. Lightning flashed, and the snowflakes in the sky turned into hail, which made passers-by flee. Jimin's urn in the funeral home also stirred, as if the contents were about to jump out. Jun sensed that something big was about to happen. He wanted to turn the prayer beads to calculate the time, but the prayer beads broke instantly. Now Jun understood that this was a ghost trying to change fate. The next day was Christmas Eve. Jaeho and Hyan took their child out shopping and once again, they ran into Jimin. Jimin hadn't seen her daughter in 3 days and stared at her for a long time. Jaeho also noticed this strange woman. Her appearance and clothes looked so similar to his wife who had died 5 years ago. Jimin suddenly snapped back to reality. Jaeho shouldn't be able to see her. Suddenly a snowflake landed on her. This time the snowflake did not pass through her body, but slowly melted on her shoulder. Jimin was then knocked over by a passerby. She did not understand what was going on. How had she been discovered by people when she had always been invisible? At this moment, Jimin, like a madman, asked the passerby if he could see her. The passerby thought he had encountered a lunatic, but no one could understand the joy of being resurrected from the dead. But after the joy, Jimin couldn't understand why she had obviously died for 5 years and why she would be resurrected today. She couldn't understand what was going on. She found Jun. Jun said that because of your last act of abusing the heavens, it has attracted attention. The heavens have decided to give you a chance to be resurrected again to fulfill your unfinished wishes. But this is not a real resurrection. Jimin only has 49 days. If she can return to the position she was in when she died within 49 days, then she will be truly resurrected. If she fails, she will die completely and enter the next reincarnation. Jimin was at a loss after hearing this news. Although she really wanted to retrieve what she had lost and live with her husband and daughter. Her husband now had Hyan, and in the past 5 years, she had witnessed Hyan's kindness to her daughter. Now they were living a happy life. So how could she bear to destroy it? Jimin, who had once been a ghost, could come and go as she pleased. But now that she had been resurrected, she didn't know where to go. She definitely couldn't go back to the funeral home. Jun repeatedly told her not to tell other ghosts the reason for her resurrection. She couldn't go to Jaeho's either because there was no longer a place for her there. Jimin wanted to go home to be with her father and mother, but when she reached the door, She remembered her mother's illness. If she suddenly appeared, they definitely wouldn't be able to accept the truth. What if they were scared? Homeless, Jimin had no choice but to go to her best friend Nikyung's shop. Luckily, she knows the code to open the door, so she can stay here for the night. Jimin looks at the photos on the wall and her thoughts are drawn back 5 years ago. She silently hides the photo of herself and Jaeho. She dares not hope for things to return to the way they were. Jimin just wants to plan how to spend the remaining 49 days. The next day, Mikyung arrives at the shop and notices at first glance that the photo wall has been moved, but she can't say exactly where. Mikyung suspects that there may have been a thief in the shop, so she immediately counted the money in the box. It doesn't matter. There's actually 10,000 won missing, and now Jimin is eating delicious food with Mikyung's money. When she was a ghost before, she never knew what hunger was, but now she feels hungry if she doesn't eat for a meal. After 5 years of being out of the world, she is gobbling up this delicious taste of the world. Unexpectedly, Jaeho also came here to buy food. Jimin was so scared that she quickly hid, because she wasn't ready to face Jaeho. The careless Kong didn't notice Jimin, and even forgot his work ID in the food truck when he left. As she watched Jaeho go, Jimin couldn't call him back, and could only take the bus to the hospital where Jaeho worked to give the ID to the receptionist. Mikyung's husband Youngho also worked at this hospital. As he passed by the reception, he suddenly saw a familiar figure, and that person was actually Jimin, who had been dead for 5 years. Youngho thought he had seen someone else and closed his eyes. Then he slowly opened them again. The Jimin he had just seen had disappeared into thin air. Youngho suspected that there was something wrong with his eyes. He must go to the ophthalmology department for an examination. In fact, Jimin had not disappeared into thin air. She had seen Youngho and taken advantage of the fact that he had closed his eyes to hide. Youngho went to Jaeho and told him what he had just seen. Jaeho, however, thought it was nonsense. This is the assistant bringing Jaeho his lost work ID. Jaeho immediately saw the graffiti on the photo. This is his exclusive mark, no one but Jimin can draw it. It turned out that just now on the bus Jimin looked at Jaeho's photo and remembered the bits and pieces of when they were in love. So she took out a pen and drew the familiar graffiti again. But when she tried to erase it, she found that she couldn't erase it. So she had to press the photo with the graffiti underneath. Unexpectedly, Jaeho found it. After leaving the hospital, Jimin went to the kindergarten. She wanted to come and see her daughter more often when she was well. When she arrived at the kindergarten, she found that the little brat was now preparing to take her daughter somewhere else. Jimin immediately stopped in front of her daughter. Her daughter couldn't dodge in time and fell directly into her arms. She remembered that every time Lucy got off school in the past, Jimin was always the first to rush up and welcome her daughter with open arms. But every time, Lucy just walked through Jimin's body. Today, she finally got her wish and was able to truly embrace her daughter. She really hoped that time would remain frozen at this moment forever. Then she and her daughter would never be separated. If it wasn't for the teacher who discovered them, Jimin would never have let go of her hands. The teacher thought Jimin was Lucy's nanny, so she told her she could take the child home now. Jimin didn't know what to do for a moment. At that time, her daughter took her hand and kept blinking her eyes. Big eyes that could speak kept blinking. Jimin's heart instantly melted, so she decided to take her daughter to kindergarten. In fact, Jimin didn't have any other thoughts. She just longed to spend some more time alone with her daughter. She was about to send her daughter home, but when Lucy saw the playground nearby, she refused to go home no matter what. She wanted to play there for a while before leaving. Jaeho had been distracted ever since he saw that graffiti. After finally getting off work, he went straight to the place where Jimin's ashes were stored, and looked at the graffiti on his work ID. Jaeho was reminded of the time when Jimin drew graffiti for him. He silently asked in his heart who had drawn this graffiti. Hyeon kept calling Jaeho after she found out that the catalyst had been picked up by someone else, but Jaeho never answered the phone. He wanted to spend more time with Jimin here. When he left, he realized that his daughter was gone. At this time, Lucy was swinging on the swings in the park. Overjoyed, she suddenly let go of her hands. Lucy fell heavily to the ground. Jimin looked at her daughter's broken palm and felt heartbroken. This was something he had risked his life for. He absolutely could not allow her to make the slightest mistake. Jimin hugged his daughter in his arms and kept saying sorry over and over again. Jaeho ran over to the sound of crying and was shocked by the scene in front of him. The woman hugging her daughter was actually his wife who had died 5 years ago. Could this be the legendary seeing a ghost in broad daylight? Jimin also noticed Jaeho at this time. This was the man she once loved the most, but now that they have met again, Jimin really doesn't know how to deal with it. Once again, snowflakes drifted in the sky, as if the heavens were also protesting against Jimin. Jimin, who had come back to her senses, let go of her daughter and wanted to quickly leave this place of trouble. But how could Jaeho let her leave so easily? No matter if the person standing in front of him was a person or a ghost, today he wanted to get to the bottom of it. Jaeho handed his daughter over to Hyeon and said that he had to meet someone very important. Hyeon naturally sensed something unusual about Jaeho, but she had been a dutiful wife and mother for many years, and never questioned her husband about his affairs because she trusted him. In the cafe, Jimin kept denying her identity and told Jaeho that they were just two people who looked very similar. But Jimin was still betrayed by the action of biting the straw. In the past, whenever Jimin was nervous, she would bite the straw, and Jaeho had already retrieved the surveillance footage. The person who delivered the work permit was the woman in front of him, so Jaeho was very sure that she was Jimin, who had been dead for 5 years. Jimin hurriedly lied and said that she had not known anything since she died. This is what she looked like when she woke up again. She had no idea what had happened in the intervening years. Jimin felt that it might be because she had behaved well as a ghost that heaven had given her a few days to resurrect. Jaeho could tell that Jimin was lying, but she didn't want to tell the truth. So there must be something she couldn't say. Jaeho arranged for Jimin to stay at a nearby hotel, and before leaving, he left her a bank card, telling her to use the money to buy whatever she wanted. Hyun waited at home until late at night, but Jaeho still didn't return. No matter how many times she called or sent messages, he didn't reply. Hyun asked the child who picked her up during the day. Lucy only said it was a pretty auntie and didn't say anything else. Hyun already guessed what had happened, but she was not going to make a fuss. She thought that Jaeho would give an explanation when he returned, but Jaeho returned and refused to answer anything. He just said that he was too tired from working all day and needed to rest immediately. At midnight, the two were awakened by the ringing of the phone. Jaeho opened the phone and saw that there were a large number of takeaway orders, and each order cost more than 100,000 won. Jaeho hurriedly explained that it was because some colleagues on duty tonight had borrowed his bank card. They probably got hungry and ordered some takeout. Jimin, who was sleeping close to her daughter for the first time, fell asleep with a smile on her face, but in her dream, she saw all kinds of delicious snacks. After sleeping for a while, she suddenly woke up because she was hungry. She thought to herself, I haven't tasted any delicious food in 5 years. So Jimin started eating like crazy with a stack of takeout. For the past 5 years, she has always watched other people eat. Today, she can finally indulge herself. Although she used Jaeho's card, Jimin felt at peace with herself. But who knew that just because of these few spending records, it would actually bring Jaeho endless trouble. After a good meal, a serious problem was placed in front of Jimin. If she can't return to her original position, then she will only have 49 days to live. Jimin's first thought was of her daughter, because she had been by her daughter's side for 5 years. Her daughter's young energy was very weak. Now Lucy could see ghosts and there was also a little ghost by her side. Jimin thought that the first thing she needed to do was to get rid of the little ghost, and then cure her daughter's illness so that she can rest in peace. It was finally dawn. Jimin was ready to go to the kindergarten immediately to get rid of the little ghost. However, as soon as she arrived in the lobby, she saw the ghostly family of her neighbor, Big Boss Ghost, who was at the funeral home. Jimin wanted to avoid them, but Big Boss Ghost noticed her. The three of them chased after her and greeted her. Jun had once warned Jimin not to let other ghosts know the reason for her resurrection, so Jimin could only pretend not to see them. But how could her actions deceive the ghosts? Ghost Big Brother's wife knew that Jimin was kind, so she deliberately sat on the ground and began to cry about her hard life. Jimin really couldn't listen to it anymore, so she found a secluded place and told her about her resurrection. Ghost Big Brother heard that she had been resurrected and immediately asked her to help fulfill the family's unfinished wishes. Jimin thought about it. She only had 49 days left, and there was no way she could help them fulfill so many wishes, so she refused. When the ghost boss heard that Jimin refused, he immediately stood up and threatened her that if she refused to help, they would tell all the ghosts the secret. As they argued, the sound got louder and louder, and a large group of ghosts had already gathered. They all wanted Jimin to help them fulfill their wishes. At this time, Jimin had no choice but to escape. It was her only way out. There were more and more ghosts behind her, so she had to hide in the garbage truck to get rid of them. Jimin, who had just escaped the danger, turned around and saw a familiar figure. It turned out to be her mother, who had come to the market to buy food. Jimin really wanted to go up and recognize her mother, but she wasn't sure if she could really survive. If she gave her mother hope and then left again after 49 days, it would be like losing her daughter twice. She couldn't bear to do that. Jimin silently followed her mother. She felt very happy just being able to see her a little longer. Her mother had bought some vegetables by the roadside. When she stood up, she looked in pain. Jimin knew this was her mother's old problem, but compared to previous years, it was much more serious. She felt extremely distressed as she watched her mother in pain, but she really didn't dare to appear in front of her mother. The next day, Jimin met the little ghost in front of her daughter's kindergarten. She implored the little ghost to leave the kindergarten, but the little ghost simply ignored her, since only Jimin could see the ghost. In the eyes of others, she was just a lunatic talking to herself. The teacher came over and told Jimin to leave quickly, but the ghost took the opportunity to run into the classroom. Jimin was too late to stop her, because she took her daughter away yesterday without permission. The teacher would not allow her to set foot in the kindergarten again, so now she could only worry. Jimin suddenly saw a job opening on the wall and had an idea. Maybe this would be the only way she could protect her daughter, so she told the teacher that she was going to apply for the job. The teacher took Jimin to the office and told her to wait for the principal. Jimin was worried about her daughter and looked around the kindergarten. Unexpectedly, She really found her daughter. Jimin looked at her daughter's longing eyes and couldn't refuse, so she decided to play with her daughter for a while. It so happened that Jaeho came to pick up his daughter today. Jaeho saw the warm scene in the classroom and couldn't bear to disturb it. He knew that this was the day Jimin had been waiting for in the past 5 years, so he chose to leave silently, hoping to let Jimin spend more time with her daughter. Just as Jaeho was lost and disoriented walking down the street, Hyeon sent him a message saying to pick up the child. Jaeho suddenly remembered that Hyeon had seen Jimin's photo. If she saw Jimin now, the consequences would be unimaginable, so he immediately called to stop Hyeon. But by this time, Hyeon had already entered the kindergarten. After hearing that her mother was here, Lucy put down her toys and ran outside, unaware of the situation. Jimin followed and chased after her. The two people who were not supposed to meet met together like this. Jaeho arrived at the scene, but he didn't know what to do in such an awkward situation. At that moment, the teacher called Jimin in. Luckily, she didn't write her real name when filling out the information, which dispelled Hyeon's concerns. On the way back, Hyeon told Jaeho that the woman just now looked so much like Jimin, but Jaeho told her that it was just a resemblance. Jimin successfully passed the interview and can start work tomorrow. She ran happily to the hotel. From tomorrow onwards, she would be able to accompany her daughter properly, and she would also be able to find an opportunity to get rid of that brat. When she arrived at the hotel, she found Jaeho wandering around the lobby, looking at the man she had always loved. Jimin couldn't help but think back to the time when she was pregnant and she was with Jaeho watching a drama. The wife of the male lead in the drama had just died 6 months ago, but the man had married another woman. At that time, Jaeho kept scolding the man for being heartless and doing such an immoral thing. If it were me, I would rather not marry for the rest of my life. But he never expected that God would really give him such a multiple choice question. But his answer was also to remarry. Jaeho, who had once vowed, was also a weak person in the face of mundane matters. In just 1 year, he married Hyeon. Now, in the face of Jimin's unexpected resurrection, Jaeho said he couldn't tell what he felt, whether it was happiness, guilt or fear. Jimin didn't tell him why he had come back to life and assured him that he had only come to Earth to take care of some matters and would return in a few days. These words made Jaeho feel creepy. Back at home, he became even more restless, so he began to try to figure out the reason why Jimin had come back to life. Jimin was preparing to completely get rid of the little brat in the kindergarten, so she came to June to beg for a spell. June told her that the charm was very powerful and that she must be careful when using it. Jimin took the charm to work at the kindergarten. However, she found that the work was completely different from what she had imagined. Jimin had to peel endless radishes and potatoes every day. She simply did not have time to see her daughter. One day, when no one was in the kitchen, she snuck into the classroom. As she passed by the photo wall, she saw the photo of Jaeho's family of 3. They were smiling so happily. Jimin suddenly felt that she was really superfluous. Although she is Lucy's biological mother, the family of 3 is now considered a family. Looking through the glass of the classroom, Jimin noticed that the little brat was still by her daughter's side. At this time, the little brat also saw Jimin. He made a face and ran towards the outside of the classroom. Jimin definitely couldn't let go of such a good opportunity. She took out the talisman and chased after him. The little brat ran to the second floor and hid directly in the refrigerator. Jimin didn't want to hurt the little brat, but for the sake of her daughter, she had no choice. But the ghost didn't react at all to the talisman. Jimin kept blaming June in her heart for giving her a fake one. Then she thought of red beans, which are the nemesis of ghosts. So Jimin brought a pot of red beans, but she still felt a little sorry for the ghost. She told the ghost, "You tell me when it hurts, and I'll stop. As long as you don't haunt Lucy, I won't hit you with red beans again." Jimin tried to throw some red beans at the ghost, but the kid didn't react at all. Jimin threw the red beans faster, but the kid had more fun. Jimin was really at a loss for what to do. Just as she was considering what to do next, a colleague came over. The colleague saw Jimin throwing red beans at the refrigerator and asked if something was wrong. Jimin hurriedly stood up to explain, but the kid took the opportunity to run out. That day, Jimin came to the photo wall again and found a photo of the little ghost. It turned out that the little ghost was also a student here before he died. Jimin quietly observed the little ghost and found that every day after school, his mood was unusually low. Whenever the doorbell rang, he would stare at the monitor of the surveillance camera. The children around him were picked up one by one, but no one came to pick him up. It was then that Jimin understood that the little ghost didn't want to stay here forever. It's just that he didn't know that he was already dead. So every day the little boy would sit here waiting for his mother to come and pick him up. Jimin understood everything and no longer made things difficult for the little boy. At that moment, she decided to help the little boy fulfill his wish of seeing his mother. The next day, Jimin proposed to the head of the kindergarten that it had been a long time since the little boy had died, and it was time to return the photo on the wall to his family. The head of the kindergarten thought it was reasonable and asked the teacher to notify the family to come to the kindergarten in the afternoon to pick up the child's photo. The doorbell rang again. The little boy turned his head as usual. The face he looked forward to seeing every day finally appeared on the monitor. The little boy shouted for his mother and ran out. He hoped that his mother would pick him up from kindergarten as she had done before, but now his mother couldn't see him at all. Lucy stood next to the little boy holding a toy. His mother always felt that this girl wanted to say something, but she wouldn't say anything. His mother knelt down and took the toy from Lucy's hand. She found that the back of the toy actually had her son's name written on it. His mother understood everything in an instant. She asked Lucy if someone was there. Mom thought about it. She thought about how her son had been waiting for her to pick him up every day. She kept blaming herself for making her son wait for 6 months. After Mom had cried enough, the little brat left the kindergarten. As she watched their figures recede into the distance, Jimin knew that the crisis in front of Lucy had been resolved. Relieved, she had just walked out of the kindergarten when she ran into her best friend from before, Mikyung. Jimin and Mikyung had known each other since junior high school. They went to the same high school and the same university. They also met their boyfriends at the same time. At that time, the four of them were like family. After Jimin became pregnant, Mikyung was by her side every day, afraid that anything would happen to her. But even so, Jimin still left this world due to an accident. At that time, Mikyung spent her days in tears, but she had just given birth to a child as well. According to local customs, she could not go out, but on the day of Jimin's burial, Mikyung really could not hold back and had to go to her final journey. But her mother-in-law refused to let Mikyung go out. She said that doing so would bring bad luck to the whole family. Mikyung didn't care about that at the time. She told her mother-in-law that even if you kick me out today, I'm going to see Jimin one last time. Back then, she watched Jimin being buried with her own eyes. Unexpectedly, 5 years later, the dead Jimin stood in front of her again. At this time, Mikyung's husband also discovered Jimin on the monitor. Naturally timid, he was about to call Mikyung, but his fingers no longer obeyed his command. He kept telling himself over and over that there were no such things as ghosts in the world. Coincidentally, Mikyung returned to the store at that moment. Her husband pointed at the surveillance camera and asked her to come and take a look. At that time, Youngho discovered Jimin behind his wife. He then told Jaeho about Jimin's resurrection. It turned out that Jimin had confessed everything to Youngho. Jaeho didn't want outsiders to know about this matter too early, so he put down his work and came to Mikyung's store. After an interval of 5 years, the four of them sat together again. Youngho still couldn't believe it was real. He touched Jimin's hand with his finger and it didn't go through like the legend said. Youngho asked about a few things they had experienced together. Unexpectedly, Jimin was able to answer them fluently. Now they were certain that the woman in front of them was Jimin. Mikyung was very happy and asked Jimin what her plans were next. In fact, Jimin really didn't have any plans. She glanced at Jaeho. Jaeho was incredibly embarrassed at this point. He should have taken Jimin home, but now he already has Hyeon. So Jaeho asked Mikyung to temporarily take in Jimin. But Jimin wants to stay at the hotel for a while. She asked everyone to keep her secret. After 49 days, she will decide what to do in the future. Although everyone is very worried about Jimin, at this time no one wants to force her. Youngho reminded Jaeho why Jimin chose 49 days in particular. Is something going to happen after 49 days? Although Jaeho also feels that something is fishy, but the current situation does not allow him to think too much. He can only take things one step at a time. On the way to send Jimin back, Jaeho kept apologizing for Jimin's return from the dead. Mikyung welcomed her back with open arms, but as a husband, he was so scared that he sat on the ground. He was supposed to give Jimin a home, but now he doesn't even have the qualification to welcome his wife home. Jimin understands Jaeho's dilemma very well. It reminds her of the first day she stayed at the hotel, when she kept getting calls from the front desk for various reasons. The next day, Jimin angrily went to the front desk to ask why, and found out that Jaeho had asked them to call Jimin every hour to make sure she was in her room when he left. Jimin's resurrection has brought back all of Jaeho's fond memories. He knows that he still deeply loves Jimin, and this time Jaeho definitely cannot let Jimin leave him again. Jimin kept throwing red beans. She wanted to drive away all the ghosts around her daughter. In order to subdue these ghosts, she even stole the ghost-repelling bell from June, and hung them all on the tree with the bell. When the ghosts agreed to leave the kindergarten, Jimin would let them down. After driving away all the ghosts, she then focused on spending time with her daughter. That day, the kindergarten held a parent-child activity. The parents sitting next to them resented Lucy and said she had no manners. Mikyung was about to defend her child when Jimin suddenly poured a basin of red beans over the woman's head. She absolutely would not allow anyone to bully her daughter. Jimin's actions were witnessed by Hyeon, who had just entered the door. She couldn't help but wonder why this woman was so concerned about her daughter. The next activity was to distribute strawberries to the children. Jimin remembered that when she was pregnant, her favorite fruit was strawberries, so she thought her daughter would love them too. But during the years she was a ghost, Hyeon never let her eat strawberries. Jimin wanted to take the opportunity today to give her daughter more strawberries, but Hyeon stopped her. Even so, Jimin was determined to let her daughter try, because the strawberries today are especially sweet, and the child will definitely like them. The teacher came running after hearing the commotion and immediately said that Lucy has been allergic to strawberries since she was a child. Jimin saw this and hurriedly apologized to Hyan. It turned out that she had been misunderstanding Hyan all along. At this time, a naughty child bit Lucy. Jimin anxiously ran over to check the injury. When she saw her daughter hurt, her heart ached and tears fell. This series of actions made Hyan very puzzled. Jimin's actions were not at all like a kitchen maid, but more like a mother protecting her child. After returning home, Hyan found a photo of Jimin when she was alive. She increasingly felt that the two of them really looked alike. 5 years ago, when Jimin was in a car accident, Hyan happened to be a nurse at that hospital. She still remembered the woman who would rather give up her life to protect her child. When Lucy was born, she was the one who carried the baby out of the operating room. Hyan remembered that the woman's face looked exactly like the woman at the kindergarten, but she had died 5 years ago. How could she suddenly appear at the kindergarten? Hyan thought about it all night and couldn't figure it out. Very depressed, she decided to go out and buy a bottle of wine to relieve her sorrow. But after buying the wine, she unknowingly walked to Mikyun's store. Jimin was here at the time, apologizing to Mikyun for being too impulsive during the day. He said that taking the matter into his own hands like that would definitely attract other people's attention. At this time, Hyan pushed the door open and walked in. The two of them didn't speak when they saw each other again. They just lifted their drinks in their hands and emptied them in one gulp. Jimin saw that she still had no intention of leaving, so she said goodbye to Mikyun and prepared to go back to the hotel. However, Hyan stopped her and asked, "Is my daughter that cute?" Jimin was considering how to answer when Hyan just collapsed on the table drunk. Mikyung and Jimin planned to take her home, but when they got outside, Hyan was acting like a lunatic, mistaking tree leaves for banknotes. She kept stuffing the leaves into her pockets. When her pockets were full, she stuffed them into her clothes. After filling her clothes, she ran onto the road. Jimin was afraid that Hyan would get hit by a car, so she went up to her and hugged her. Hyan looked up at the woman in front of her, as if she had suddenly remembered something. She actually looked up and ran straight into Jimin. Hyan was afraid that Jimin would take her husband and child away, so she took direct action. In fact, Jimin, as the biological mother, didn't really think much about it. She just wanted to spend more time with her daughter. The next night, Jimin and Hyan met again at an intersection. Although the two were separated by a road, the air was full of a strong smell of gunpowder. Jimin remembered the encouragement the ghosts had given her. Why not fight for something that should belong to you? Since God has given you a chance to resurrect, you should seize it. At this time, the green light came on. Jimin no longer avoided it and walked directly towards Hyan. Lucy discovered that Jimin had actually run towards her with open arms. Jimin tightly embraced her daughter in her arms and quietly enjoyed this moment of warmth. Hyan couldn't believe her eyes. In her impression, Lucy had never been so close to anyone. She snatched Lucy and was about to leave. At this moment, Jimin remembered that Hyan asked her last night if she wanted to be Lucy's mother. Yesterday, she didn't have the courage to answer this question. Now, she summoned up the courage to stop Hyan and express her willingness. The three of them went to a coffee shop. At this moment, Jimin didn't dare to look up at Hyan's eyes again. Lucy kept looking at the two people in front of her. The young girl didn't know that she was facing a century-old problem. Two people who are as different as fire and water. The ringing of a cell phone broke the awkward silence. It turned out that Hyan was going back to work at the hospital, so she needed a babysitter to drive her to and from work. She had been posting online for a few days without finding anyone suitable. At that time, Jimin said that she could give it a try. It happened to be that she could take Lucy to and from work every day. In fact, Hyan also thought that Jimin was very suitable. However, she had always been suspicious of Jimin's identity, especially every time she saw her. She never dared to look up. Jimin is like a child who has done something wrong, so she needs to discuss this with Jaeho when she gets back. On the way back, Hyan was very puzzled and asked the child why she was so enthusiastic with the aunt just now. "You have never smiled at me like that before." The sensible Lucy kissed the back of Hyan's hand and told her, "I will always love you most." Hyan was overjoyed when she heard these heartwarming words, but she forgot one thing: she is not Lucy's real mother. After arriving home, Hyan and Jaeho discussed finding a nanny for the baby. Jaeho had no objections and let Hyan make the decision. But when he heard that the nanny they were looking for was Jimin, Jaeho's face still flashed with a trace of fear and unease, although he tried his best to hide it. How could he hide it from Hyan, who had lived with him for 5 years? The next day, Hyan handed the baby over to Jimin. Her decision would cause her daughter to gradually drift away from her. Jimin spends her spare time helping the ghosts fulfill their unfinished wishes. She returns to the hotel after a long day of work only to find Jaeho waiting for her. Jaeho persuades Jimin to give up the idea of being Lucy's nanny. It is a torment for him. He cannot face the situation of seeing his lover every day but not being able to recognize her. But Jimin tells Jaeho that being the nanny is not out of selfishness. It is because there are still many lonely ghosts around the child. She must get rid of them within 49 days. This reason made Jaeho unable to refuse, so he could only agree to let Jimin pick up and drop off the child every day. Then Jae-ho went to Mikyung's shop and cried to them about his miserable situation. Mikyung, however, thought that things were not that simple. Jimin returned this time very suddenly using amnesia as an excuse. She concealed everything that had happened in the 5 years since her death, and she kept mentioning 49 days. What exactly did 49 days mean? It seems that Jimin is hiding something from us. At this moment, Jae-ho remembered that when Jimin first came back to life, she was hesitant when she spoke to him. He already guessed that Jimin must have something she can't tell us. Since Jimin doesn't want to talk about it, we'll wait a bit. After 49 days, we'll know what's going on. Jimin bought some nutritional supplements for her parents and left them outside the door while it was dark. The family dog saw its owner and wagged its tail to say hello. The parents in the room saw the dog's unusual behavior and thought it might have seen someone very familiar. But there was nothing outside the door except the dog. Jimin hid in the dark and looked up to see her parents' room. She felt that having this physical body had caused her more trouble. When she was a ghost, she often sneaked into her mother's room and sat with her for a while. Now if she went in like that, she would only scare her parents half to death. At this time, Jimin could only wish her parents good health from outside the door. In the morning, her father found something outside the door. The family sat in the house, staring at the object in disbelief. The person who sent the gift knew them so well. Dad and his sister racked their brains trying to figure out who the sender could be, but only Mom remembered that it could have been something sent by Jimin. Every time she called Jimin, she would remind her to take care of her knees and to remind Dad to take his medicine on time. Mom guessed that the most likely person to send the gift was Jimin, but her daughter had died 5 years ago, so it definitely wasn't her. Just thinking about her dead daughter made Mom feel really bad. The former Jimin had always been the pride of her parents. She was obedient, sensible and understanding, but a car accident 5 years ago had separated them forever. No one can understand the pain of burying a child. The taciturn father cried his heart out in front of his daughter's portrait. The kind-hearted mother also knew what it meant to be heartbroken. From then on, she went to the temple every month to pray for her daughter. She asked the monk, "I raised my daughter to adulthood. I have never enjoyed the happiness of a family. Why did she leave me?" The monk told the mother that it was all predestined. No one can change this. You'd better learn to forget about it. But for a mother, the child she carried in her womb for 10 months and raised for 30 years is not something she can forget about so easily. Countless times, the mother prayed before the Buddha, hoping to trade her remaining lifespan for her daughter's rebirth. If someone really had to leave, she hoped it would be her. The mother's actions finally moved the heavens. Jimin was given a chance to be resurrected. Mom seemed to sense something, but she always inadvertently missed her daughter. Jimin had also thought countless times about telling her mother that she had been resurrected, but she was afraid that her mother would not be able to accept the truth. Besides, Jimin had a mission to complete. If she failed, she would only be able to stay in the world for 49 days. She didn't want her mother to go through the pain of losing and then gaining her again. A malicious ghost learned about Jimin's situation. She brought a talisman and came to find her mother. Jimin had been wandering the earth since her death and had been reluctant to leave. She was suffering greatly. The ghost was actually trying to trick the family for money. Just as her mother was half believing, June appeared. She warned the ghost to stop this deceitful behavior or she would never be able to reincarnate. After the ghost left, June muttered to herself about Jimin having been resurrected. When she realized that her mother was right there, it was too late to make amends. She had to explain that she was talking about another mother, but her actions undoubtedly made things worse. June knew she was in trouble and ran to Mikyung's shop to find Jimin. Seeing June's sudden visit, Jimin knew there must be something important, so she quickly sent Mikyung away. June looked around to make sure no one was around and told Jimin what had happened. Jimin knew her mother was meticulous, and although she pretended to be nothing, her mother would inevitably be sad for a few days after returning home. June took the opportunity to persuade Jimin, "Since God has given you this opportunity, why don't you cherish it? As long as you can get your old position back, you can be completely resurrected." But Jimin resolutely refused to do so. Jae-ho and Hyeon were very happy without her. She didn't want to break them up because of her selfishness. Just as the two were arguing endlessly, the door was kicked open. It turned out that Mikyung had heard everything they had said outside the door. She couldn't understand Jimin's actions at all. Mikyung calls Jae-ho to tell him everything, but Jimin grabs her phone and begs her not to do so. It turns out that 5 years ago, when Jimin had just passed away, Jae-ho spent every day in tears. The CD player played Jimin's favorite songs over and over again. Jae-ho silently told Jimin in his heart, "I will go to you when I have raised our child." Jae-ho had already cried his tears dry by then, but he didn't know that Jimin's ghost was by his side. Jimin looked at Jae-ho's sad face and was also unable to do anything, because she couldn't touch anything with her hands. She didn't even have the qualification to help her husband wipe away his tears. Although the two of them blamed the injustice of heaven, they were unable to change this fact. Jae-ho locked himself in his room and wouldn't speak to anyone. Mikyung cooked good meals for Jae-ho every day, but he wouldn't eat a single bite. In the past, Jae-ho and Jimin were a pair. but now he is alone. He is now like a walking corpse, because Jimin's departure has taken away everything he has. Jae-ho uses alcohol to numb himself every day. This is the only way to alleviate his longing for Jimin. Although Jimin is distressed about Jae-ho, the only thing she can do is quietly stay by Jae-ho's side. Just when Jae-ho was at his lowest, Hyun came into his life. Hyun and Jae-ho were college alumni. She had a crush on Jae-ho when they were at school, but at that time Jae-ho already had Jimin, so she hid that love deep in her heart. Hyun witnessed them fall in love and get married, and she also witnessed Jimin giving up her life to save her child. Hyun knows everything that Jae-ho has been through. Hyun knew the greatness of Jimin, so she didn't want to desecrate their unwavering love. But when she saw such a depressed Jae-ho, she decided to do what Jimin didn't finish. With Hyun's efforts, Jae-ho's face gradually began to smile. He accepted Hyun's courtship and also buried the thoughts of Jimin deep in his heart. The three of them spent 5 happy years together. Because of this, Jimin didn't want to disturb their peaceful lives. She was afraid that she would die again. She didn't want to see Jae-ho's heartbroken face again. Mikyung also understood Jimin's plight and embraced her in her arms. She promised Jimin not to mention this to Jae-ho. Jimin's mother missed her daughter so much that she went out for a bike ride to take her mind off things. A familiar sound of crying attracted her. She slowly walked up and discovered that the woman crying was her daughter Jimin, who had been dead for 5 years. The mother was so shocked that she fainted. Luckily, she was only overcome with emotion and was not seriously hurt. Jimin looked at her mother lying in the hospital bed and kept blaming herself. She really didn't want her presence to affect her family. Jae-ho also came to the hospital after getting the news. He knew that his mother-in-law had always had a heart condition, so he asked the doctor on duty to redo the examination. At that time, it happened that her mother also woke up. She took Jae-ho's hand and said, "I think I saw something just now, but I'm not sure." Jimin, who was hiding in the background, couldn't help crying out. Mom realized that she had not mistaken the woman in front of her for her daughter, who had died 5 years ago. The mother and daughter embraced each other and cried. Jimin could finally go home with a clear conscience. Mom held her tightly in her arms. She didn't dare let go for fear that her daughter would leave her again. Jimin lay in her mother's arms and enjoyed the long-lost warmth. Her mother's embrace made her feel warm. Only here was her safe haven. Mom stroked Jimin's hair with her hands, her face full of joy at having regained her daughter. Her younger sister pushed the door open and saw Jimin lying on the bed, so she gently closed the door. A little while later, her father opened the door again to look for his daughter. Her mother happily told them, "It's really Jimin lying next to me." Her father and younger sister also wanted to feel this joy, so they all crowded onto the big bed. Her mother and younger sister lay on either side of Jimin, hugging her tightly. Her father, who was on the side, was anxious. He discussed with her mother whether they could switch places, because he also wanted to hug his daughter. Unexpectedly, her father was kicked off the bed by her mother. Even so, the four of them were all beaming with happiness. Since Jimin's death, there had never been laughter in this house. Now that their daughter had returned from the dead, of course they had to laugh. The next day, Jimin woke up early and went to her room. Although it had been 5 years, she noticed that everything in the house was exactly the same as it had been 5 years ago. It turned out that her mother had cleaned the house every day. She firmly believed that her daughter would return one day. Jimin accidentally saw the shoes on the cabinet. Her mother had made them for her with her own hands. In fact, her mother also loved her child, but since Jimin's death, her mother has never seen her child again. She is afraid that seeing her child will once again open up her painful memories. When her mother saw the shoes in Jimin's hand, she knew that she missed her child. Jimin said she wanted to eat dumplings, so she sent her mother away. Then she took her things and prepared to go to the kindergarten. Today is the first time she has been her daughter's nanny. She must not be late. A medical report was stuck to the door. The doctor who wrote the report was Jae-ho. When Jae-ho chose his major, he chose cardiothoracic surgery, which no one wanted, because he knew Jimin's mother had a heart condition. He told Yuri that anyone with a heart condition must have a surgeon by their side, and he was willing to take care of his mother for the rest of her life. Jae-ho said so and did so. After Jimin died, in order to force Jae-ho to remarry, his mother refused to have any medical examinations. Even so, every time after his mother's examination, Jae-ho would ask about her condition and give the best treatment plan. He even secretly delivered the examination report to the house. This made Jimin very happy. Even if he never gets reincarnated, he doesn't have to worry about his mother's health. His mother bought some pickled vegetables but found that Jimin was gone. His father handed her a note. Jimin said that there was something she needed to take care of and that she would be back later to eat the dumplings. His mother guessed that she might have gone to see their child. Yesterday, she woke up and Jae-ho was by her side, but Jae-ho wasn't the least bit surprised by Jimin's resurrection. It seems that he knew about this a long time ago. The old couple couldn't help but feel sorry for their daughter. Now that she has been resurrected, Jaeho has another woman by his side, and they don't know how their future will unfold. Jimin took an amulet and put some red beans in her pocket. She was going to take her daughter home and drive away the ghost. On the way, Jimin gave her daughter a string of delicious squid. The owner kept praising Lucy for her beauty and said that the child and Jimin looked exactly the same. This sentence made Jimin feel a mixture of emotions. At that moment, a ghost appeared next to the food truck. Jimin tried asking her daughter if she could see the man next to her. However, her daughter said she could see an uncle wearing a hat. Jimin felt even more self-blame when she heard this answer. Although she had already driven away the ghost from the kindergarten, her daughter could still see other ghosts. This must be the ghost of the family's land-bound spirit at work. Jimin wished she could fly home right now to drive away the land-bound spirit. But Hyan had signed the child up for a lot of tutorial classes. After all the classes were over, it was already dark. Lucy gave Jimin the egg in her hand. Jimin found a black and white doodle on the egg. It turned out to be a work from Lucy's art class. Jimin carefully held the egg. This was the first gift her daughter had given her. She must treasure it. Jimin noticed that her daughter still had another egg in her hand with colorful doodles on it. She asked her who it was intended for. Lucy didn't answer, just smiled and ran off. It turned out to be Hyan picking up Lucy, watching her child put the egg in Hyan's hands and call her affectionately mommy. Jimin's heart was filled with loss and jealousy. She knew her work was done, so she handed her bag to Hyan and turned to walk in the opposite direction. Hyan saw that Jimin and the child were both reluctant to part, so she invited Jimin to come to her house and sit. After all, as the child's nanny, she should be familiar with the home environment. Jimin thanked her profusely. Only when she arrived at their home did she have the opportunity to exorcise the evil spirits. Jaeho came home from work and found Jimin there. He wanted to turn around and leave, but Hyan noticed. Hyan asked him to go in and meet the guests, but Jaeho simply couldn't face two women at the same time. He had to hide in the study, saying he still had work to do. Jimin found traces of the evil spirits in the house, but as Hyan was nearby, she couldn't use her powers. Jimin had to hurry and say goodbye, and prepare to come back another day to get rid of the evil spirits. Jaeho saw that Hyan and Jimin had both gone downstairs, so he slipped out of the study. He was hungry and grumbling, looking for food. At that moment, he noticed the eggs on the table. Jimin realized that she had forgotten her gift, so she hurried after Hyan to get it upstairs. But when she got to the room, she realized that the eggs had already been swallowed by Jaeho. The three of them shouted at Jaeho at the same time. At this moment, Hyan realized that the person who cared about this gift the most was actually Jimin. And Jaeho, in the face of this woman who lost her temper with him, chose to tolerate. After Jimin left, Hyan and Jaeho expressed their doubts. Why did this nanny look so much like Jimin? Was her love for the child a bit excessive? Hyan advocated changing the nanny for the child, but Jaeho disagreed with everything. Hyan, who has always obeyed her husband, didn't say anything more, but she already had her own thoughts in her heart. Jimin, who returned home, also realized her impulsiveness just now. If she continues like this, she will reveal her identity sooner or later. But halfway through the 49 days has already passed. She has not completed any of her tasks. The next day, Hyan told Jimin the family's password and asked her to take the child directly home after school. Jimin thought this was a good opportunity to exorcise the ghost. She took half a day off work and stole a bell from June to subdue the ghost once and for all. Jimin swung the bell and began her incantation, but then she noticed that there was still a female ghost hanging on the ceiling. This was a virgin ghost. After death, she must find a man with masculine energy to resolve her regrets before she can reincarnate. And the female ghost had chosen Jaeho. She had wanted to possess Hyan and complete her mission, but Hyan's aura was just too strong, and the female ghost simply couldn't get inside her. If she left like that, she wouldn't be able to let go of Jaeho's handsome body, so she hid at home and waited for her chance. Jimin hated these ghosts that plagued the world the most, so she handed the female ghost over to June. It would just boost her sales. The earthbound spirit was also sent to the funeral home. Naturally, this ghost that haunts children also receives special care. Jimin let out a long sigh after driving away the two ghosts. She asked June if Lucy would never see ghosts again. June stammered and didn't give a direct answer, but she knew in her heart that if she couldn't cure Lucy's illness this time, then she would become a half-human, half-ghost medium just like her. Jimin thought that the problem was solved and came to Mikyung's shop to chat. She told Mikyung everything she had experienced in the 5 years since her death. At first, she just wanted to come back to see her daughter a few times, but the more she saw, the more reluctant she was to leave. So she stayed by her daughter's side for 5 years. It was also her selfishness that caused her daughter to be able to see ghosts. So Jimin's first priority in being resurrected this time is to cure her daughter's illness. As for whether she will die after 49 days is no longer important. Mikyung finally understood Jimin's dilemma and why she knew Hyan so well. Hyan gave up her job to take care of her child because of the rumors outside. she chose to isolate herself from the world, resulting in the fact that she doesn't have any friends now. But she took good care of her child in Jaeho. Jimin feels that she owes Hyeon so much that she could never repay her in a few lifetimes. That's why she won't fight with Hyeon for the position of the eldest daughter, even if it means her life or death. Hyeon has loved Bracken since she was a child, but it's something Jaeho doesn't like at all. That's why Hyeon has never bought Bracken in the past 5 years. She has always been so kind that it makes people feel sad for her. Jimin puts a box of Bracken in her daughter's school bag and asks her to give it to Hyeon in the evening. Seeing Hyeon eating with relish, Jaeho realized that Hyeon had hidden her hobby for his sake, and Hyeon was also wondering how Jimin knew that she loved Bracken. One day, a drunk driver was riding a motorcycle on the road, and a car was opening its door to let someone out. The motorcycle seemed to have lost control and crashed into the elderly man. It looked like a disaster was about to happen. Jimin ran over and hugged the elderly man. The driver also suddenly came to his senses and quickly swerved. The three of them fell to the ground at the same time. The old man in her arms was shaking uncontrollably. The motorcycle driver was also lying on the ground, unconscious, with blood all over his face. This scene in front of her brought Jimin's thoughts back 5 years ago. She was also separated from her loved ones in an accident. The helplessness she felt then came flooding back. If only there had been a doctor by her side, perhaps things would have turned out differently. Jimin didn't want them to go down the same path she had 5 years ago, so she dialed Jaeho's phone number. Jaeho comforted Jimin for a while, and then he rushed to the emergency room first. The doctor in the emergency department briefly examined the injuries of the two, and found that the old man did not have any external injuries, so he thought he was fine. So they went to rescue the driver who was covered in blood. Only Jimin noticed the old man in the hospital bed. Her spirit was already looming, ready to leave at any time. Jimin knew that the old man's injuries were serious, so she found the doctor and asked them to rescue the old man. However, none of the busy doctors believed her. At this time, Jaeho arrived at the hospital. After seeing that Jimin was unharmed, his heart was finally set at ease. Jimin didn't have time to explain to Jaeho, and just kept asking him to save the old man. Jaeho thought that the doctors must have already examined the old man. They would only save other patients after making sure that he was fine. However, Jimin kept insisting, even shouting at Jaeho. Helpless, Jaeho could only go to the old man's side and give him a routine examination. At this time, he discovered that the old man's pupils had begun to dilate, and his pulse was intermittent. Sure enough, the old man was slowly dying, so he notified the doctor to immediately perform resuscitation. Fortunately, the rescue was timely, and the old man quickly got out of danger. Jimin was finally relieved after hearing the news. However, Jaeho was a little confused. Why had the emergency department doctors not discovered the internal injuries? But Jimin, who did not know anything about medicine, had. Facing Jaeho's doubts, Jimin could only lie and say that it was her sixth sense. Then she said goodbye to Jaeho and hurriedly left the hospital. When she passed by the hospital's punishment wall, Jimin discovered Jaeho's name. At this time, she realized that since her car accident, Jaeho had never performed surgery on a patient. As the mainstay of the hospital's surgery department, he actually trembled when he picked up the scalpel. 5 years ago, when Jimin was in a car accident, she was taken to the hospital where Jaeho worked. Because she was seriously injured, she should have been operated on by the top surgeon. But at that time, Jaeho was resuscitating another patient. He didn't realize that Jimin had been hurt so badly, so he let another doctor take care of it first. When Jaeho arrived, Jimin had already closed his eyes forever. Jaeho regretted it if he had come to save Jimin at that time. Perhaps it would not have turned out this way. However, there are not so many ifs in the world. Jimin had already left him forever. From that moment on, whenever Jaeho entered the operating room, the person on the operating table would always become Jimin, and his hand holding the scalpel would tremble. Every time, he fled from the operating room like his life depended on it. All of this was because of the guilt he could not shake. Now, Jimin has returned to Jaeho's side once again, but Jaeho has no reason to hold her hand again, because everything has long since changed. Mikyoung found June and wanted to confirm from her whether what Jimin said about the 49 days was true. If that was really the case, was there any way to remedy the situation? June also wanted to help Jimin, but just as she was about to take action, a man with a club approached her. This man is called an exorcist and is in charge of the fate of all ghosts in the world. Any ghost found not reincarnating on time will be sent to the 18th level of hell by him. Today, he came to the human world to find June and reprimand her, because June is too kind and always arranges time for the dead to fulfill their unfinished wishes. This has caused the number of ghosts reincarnating to be completely out of sync with the numbers in the Book of the Dead. The exorcist suspended June's rights on Earth for 1 month to observe and then decide on a punishment. He also has a special mission this time, which is to pick up Jimin and Lucy. If Lucy can still see ghosts now, she will take her back to the base for training. After 20 years, She will come back to Earth to take over Jun's position. The kind-hearted Jun doesn't want to see Jimin get hurt, so she asked the exorcist to give her the task. But the exorcist's decision could not be changed. After the exorcist left, Jun became even more restless. She could only pray silently to Jimin's urn. Nowadays, Jimin still works in the kindergarten every day. She just wants to spend more time with her daughter in the few days she has left. A little girl named Eunjin was whispering to her teacher. When Eunjin saw Jimin come in, she even told her the secret. Her mother found out that Hyan had been visiting a lawyer recently, and realized that Hyan was getting a divorce from Jaeho. This news shocked Jimin. She couldn't understand why the couple, who usually treated each other with respect, would suddenly get a divorce. This news also spread in the kindergarten parent group. Yeonjin's mother posted the news in the group. Everyone even discussed the reasons for their divorce. The first few people to comment all felt that it was because of Lucy, even though she is only 5 years old. She seems to have the intelligence of a 3-year-old, and just talks to herself and plays with herself every day. Some other mothers thought that it was because the stepmother and daughter had reached a point where they could no longer get along with each other that they chose to get a divorce. They said that nothing else mattered. But when it came to Lucy, Jimin couldn't stand it anymore. She found Mikyoung and prepared to go teach these women a lesson. Hyan, who had also seen the message, also changed her gentle style. She remembered what Jimin had once said: if someone rides on your back and bullies you, you should hit back. Hyan didn't want to tolerate it anymore this time, so she found Mikyoung and Jimin. 3 women who were not originally from the same place decided to do something big for a child. After they found their target, they just beat the crap out of them. Hyan, who is usually the weakest, was also constantly swinging the mace in her hands. Women are naturally strong when they become mothers. It was because they always bullied the children that the 2 mothers' bottom lines were touched. At the celebration party, Hyan changed her image from the past gentle lady. Although Jimin stayed by her side for 5 whole years when she was a ghost, she never saw her smile once. It turned out that today's Hyan is her true self. She suppressed her character in order to be a good stepmother. After experiencing this incident, the 3 women seemed to have become the best of sisters. They began to talk about everything. Hyan also learned that Jimin and Mikyoung only became friends after a fight. When they were in school, the 2 fought over a storybook. Unexpectedly, Hyan ended up taking the book. No one could have guessed who the real winner would be until the very end. While Jimin was in the bathroom, Mikyoung quietly asked Hyan if she really intended to divorce Jaeho. Upon hearing this question, Hyan's face immediately lost its smile. She said that when she married Jaeho, her family did not approve. It was only after she threatened to die repeatedly that she was able to secure such a marriage. However, Hyan realized that she was like a servant in Jaeho's family. She felt that this was too exhausting to live. Although she had thought about getting a divorce more than once, she always failed in the end. Mikyoung also remembered that when Jimin had just passed away, Jaeho used alcohol to drown his sorrows every day. It was not until Hyan appeared that Jaeho's mood eased. However, Jaeho was afraid to accept Hyan's confession because he felt that it would be betraying Jimin. In the end, Mikyoung persuaded him that life is a long road, and that he should not give up the rest of his life because of Jimin's departure. It was only after Mikyoung's persuasion that Jaeho came out of the gloom and got together with Hyan. But now, faced with Jimin's return from the dead, Mikyoung suddenly didn't know what to do. Should she help Jimin or Hyan? Jaeho is now playing with his daughter's stickers. He takes off a girl's sticker and asks his daughter where it should go. His daughter takes the photo frame and puts the sticker in the corner of the family photo. Jaeho tells her that this is our family photo and we shouldn't put other people here. Besides, do you know who she represents? His daughter points at the sticker and says Jimin's name. Jaeho can't believe his ears. Since Jimin's death, no one around her has ever mentioned this name. How did her daughter know it? At that moment, the doorbell rang. It turned out to be Jimin, who was taking a drunk Hyan home. The child pointed at the woman on the screen and shouted Jimin's name again. Jaeho then knew that this was definitely not a coincidence. After settling Hyan, Jaeho told Jimin what had just happened, but Jimin simply did not believe it was true. Seeing Jaeho insisting on his version over and over again, Jimin suddenly remembered that every day when she was a ghost, she would go to the park with her daughter. One time, her ghost friend came to call her back. She clearly remembered that her daughter's gaze had been fixed on the direction she left. Jimin then realized that her daughter had been able to see her for the past 5 years. Lucy had also long since regarded Jimin as a member of the family. It was just that as a young girl, she could not understand what ghosts were, so she had no idea who Jimin really was. Jimin realized everything and burst into tears. Although she really wanted her daughter to know that she existed, she didn't want her daughter to see a ghost. Jaeho took the opportunity to persuade Jimin to take this opportunity to tell everyone. Jaeho thought it was tiring to hide it from Hyan every day, but Jimin refused to do it no matter what. Jaeho questioned her as to why. Jimin never answered. just kept saying no, and then she wandered alone on the street. Suddenly a lecherous man blocked her way. The man shamelessly said he wanted to be friends with her. Jimin was in a bad mood and directly rejected his request. The man couldn't help but be a little puzzled. In today's world, there are actually women who can reject his handsome face. Enraged, he waved his weapon and grabbed Jimin back. Jimin looked at the man's hideous face and realized the danger. She asked the man what he really wanted. The man said, "I'm here to pick you and your daughter up." Luckily, June appeared in time to save Jimin, and it was then that Jimin realized that the man in front of her was June's immediate superior, the exorcist. Seeing that June was not going to give up without taking Jimin with him, the exorcist temporarily stepped back, and as he left, he warned Jimin that next time, "I will definitely take you and your daughter with me." Although this time's crisis was resolved, Jimin couldn't understand why the exorcist repeatedly insisted on taking Lucy away. June saw that she could no longer hide it, so she told the exorcist the purpose of his coming to the human world. Lucy is the most suitable candidate to be the next medium. Jimin thought that by driving away the earthbound ghost, she could completely cure her daughter's illness. Unexpectedly, they experienced another disaster, but the only thing they could do now was to stay by their child's side and not give the exorcist a chance. June took the opportunity to persuade Jimin, "Have you no intention of finding your place yet? If you can truly resurrect, you can completely protect your child, because the exorcist cannot harm humans. Right now, you are half human and half ghost. It may be difficult to protect your child like this." Jimin also wants to resurrect, but she has her own concerns. Right now, she is also forced to do so. She finally tells June her true feelings, because her daughter's favorite person is her mother, Hyeon. Jimin's heart breaks the moment she sees her daughter run towards Hyeon. Although she is the biological mother, in her daughter's eyes she is just an outsider. Jimin has long since seen through everything. She has no demands. If it means her daughter's safety and health, she would go to hell and back without any complaints. June has never been a mother, but she has already read everything in Jimin's eyes. She promised Jimin that she would definitely help protect the child. Jimin bought 2 self-defense tools. She kept one for herself and gave the other to Hyeon. She told Hyeon that there are a lot of bad people on the streets these days, and it wouldn't hurt to have some protection. Jimin asked her daughter if she knew who she was. The sensible Lucy didn't say anything, but she stroked Jimin's hair with her hand. This small gesture said it all. It was enough to melt her mother's heart. Jimin's resurrection this time was full of doubts, and it seemed that she had also learned a lot of supernormal capabilities. Jaeho has discussed this with Youngho more than once. He always thinks that he can get some useful information from Mikyoung. After being reminded by Jaeho, Youngho also feels that Mikyoung has been very strange recently. Every day after work, she just keeps drinking. When she gets drunk, she starts crying and keeps talking nonsense. Jaeho thinks that she must know something, so he came to the store to find Mikyoung. But Mikyoung said she didn't know anything, but from the way she avoided his gaze, Jaeho knew she was hiding something. The next day was the weekend. Jimin still wanted to see her daughter. She wanted to send Hyeon a message, but didn't know how to say it. Just as Jimin didn't know what to do, Jaeho brought his daughter over. He said that no one would be able to take care of the child at home today, and asked Jimin to take care of her for the day. As she watched Jaeho's back as he walked away, Jimin of course understood that this was a deliberate arrangement on his part. Since her death 5 years ago, her parents have cut off all contact with Jaeho in order to force him to remarry. It's not that they are heartless, but kind. They don't want to cause any trouble for Jaeho. Now that Jimin has come back to life, Lucy should of course go and recognize her grandmother. In the past, Jimin's father always secretly went to see the baby. Today, they can finally play with the baby in an official capacity. Jaeho finds Youngho and tells him about taking the kids to Jimin's house without Hyeon's knowledge. He asks Youngho to go back and tell Mikyoung that they are going out with the kids today. But before Youngho can go back, Hyeon runs into Mikyoung. Seeing Mikyoung with the kids, he remembers what Jaeho said when he left this morning. Hyeon realizes that Jaeho is lying to her, but she doesn't expose him. She hoped that Jaeho would give her a reasonable explanation when he returned. Jaeho sat in the park until late at night before coming to Jimin's house to pick up the child. Jimin was full of gratitude for Jaeho. He had allowed the 2 elderly people to enjoy some family time. Before leaving, she told Jaeho to hold the child's hand on the way. Jaeho left with a promise. On the way back, Jaeho received a text message from Hyeon. As he took out his phone, he instantly let go of his daughter's hand. At this time, Lucy suddenly heard a voice in the distance calling to her. Then she left her father and ran towards the voice. The careless Jaeho walked forward while replying to Hyeon's message. When he realized that his daughter was gone, his daughter had already run to the side of the exorcist. If Jaeho had found out a minute later, Lucy might have been taken away by the exorcist. Jaeho grabbed the exorcist and asked him who he really was. The exorcist said he was Jimin's friend. At this time, Jae-ho realized everything about Jimin. He put his daughter in Mikyung's house and went to find Jimin as soon as possible. There were some things he needed to clarify with Jimin face to face. Jae-ho kept saying sorry over and over again because he had let Jimin down. Once upon a time, they were a perfect match and were extremely happy together. An accident took Jimin away. One person's departure also destroyed a family. Jae-ho's happy time came to an end. The sunny young boy from yesterday had become a shell of his former self. Apart from eating, he just sat on the bed and stared blankly. If it weren't for his daughter, he would have followed Jimin to the afterlife. But he doesn't know that Jimin has already become a ghost and is now by his side. Although Jimin feels sorry for Jae-ho, there is nothing he can do. 6 months later, Hyeon entered Jae-ho's life. Jae-ho's face gradually began to smile. Jimin witnessed them step by step into the marriage hall. At that time, Jimin was very sad. The smile that once belonged to her alone was now given to someone else. Jae-ho used to hold her hands, but now he holds someone else's. But compared to Jae-ho's depression, Jimin's heart is actually much lighter. In fact, the last thing she wants to see is Jae-ho not eating or drinking because she left. Jimin is really happy to see Jae-ho forget the past and live happily with his family. In her heart, as long as she can see her husband and daughter happy, nothing else matters. The more Jimin said this, the more Jae-ho felt like a sinner. He cried and begged Jimin to forgive him. Yuri wanted to comfort Jae-ho, but when her hand was about to touch Jae-ho's shoulder, she gave up. She absolutely could not give Jae-ho any hope at this time. No one could understand Jae-ho's feelings at this time. The wife he had once been married to was now like a stranger. But everything had already been decided. Jae-ho suddenly remembered the man he had just met and asked Jimin if she had a friend like that. Jimin then realized that the exorcist had already begun to target her daughter. She was relieved to learn that her daughter was at Mikyung's house. Jimin told Jae-ho about her experiences over the past 5 years. Except for the 49 days, she asked Jae-ho to go and get her daughter right away. And from now on, she must ensure that someone is always by her daughter's side. After returning home, Jae-ho began to guard his daughter day and night. Hyeon could tell that something was wrong with Jae-ho, but Jae-ho refused to say anything. The weekend came around again, and Jae-ho took his daughter to Jimin's house as usual. Jimin and her father took the child to the park. The 3 generations had a great time. Jimin was about to go to the supermarket to buy her daughter a bottle of water. Before leaving, she told her father to keep an eye on the child. At that moment, an old man pulling a 3-wheeled cart suddenly fell over, spilling the contents of the cart all over the ground. Jimin's father quickly went over to help the old man up. He turned to tell Lucy to sit on the chair and not to move. He helped pack the things and came back. The toys in the hands of a few children attracted Lucy's attention. She followed the toys and walked out of the park. When Jimin's father turned around again, there was no longer any trace of the child in the park. At this moment, Lucy lost track of the toys and also forgot the way back. Meanwhile, Hyeon was sitting in a cafe waiting for Jae-ho. These days, she had noticed something strange about Jae-ho. He did nothing all day long, just staying by the children's side. Hyeon had asked him more than once if there was something he was hiding from her, but Jae-ho never answered. This morning, Jae-ho finally spoke. He asked Hyeon to meet him at the cafe after work. He was going to tell her everything. Hyeon, sitting in the cafe, was very uneasy. She wanted to hear the truth but was afraid to, because these days, many parents had told her that Jae-ho and the nanny who picked her up from school were getting close. The two of them even sat in the park in the middle of the night talking. Although Hyeon really wanted Jae-ho to open up and accept her for who she was, she was even more afraid of losing this relationship that had lasted for 5 years. Just as Hyeon was racking her brains, Jimin called. Jae-ho also arrived outside the cafe at this time, and looking at Hyeon's back, he really felt a little uncomfortable, and he didn't dare to imagine what Hyeon would become after learning the truth. After much deliberation, Jae-ho still felt that he should tell her everything. Hyeon suddenly stood up and ran out, and she ran head-on into Jae-ho. At this time, Jae-ho realized that his daughter was missing. Jae-ho took Hyeon to the park and they started to search separately. The 3 searched every inch of the neighborhood but found nothing. When Jae-ho and Hyeon met again, Hyeon completely broke down. She cried and asked Jae-ho what she should do. At this time, Jimin also came over. No one would be more saddened than her if she lost her child. However, now she had to keep saying sorry to Hyeon over and over again. This is a very cruel scene in the play. Her own biological daughter is lost, but her husband is constantly comforting Minjin. As a mother, Jimin could only keep apologizing beside her, while her husband didn't even have the right to comfort her. At this time, Lucy was standing in the middle of the road crying. As a young child, she didn't realize the danger. A man dressed in black was slowly approaching her. The exorcist was waiting for just such an opportunity. As long as he could catch Lucy, he could immediately go back and report. Just when the situation was critical, the ghostly family passing by discovered the exorcist. Today is the day the ghostly family is reincarnated. They had planned to take a few more looks at their loved ones before leaving. Having received help from Jimin before, They could not just stand by and do nothing, so the ghostly family leader took charge of distracting the exorcist. His wife and daughter guided Lucy away from the dangerous place. They led Lucy to a slide and told her to hide inside the slide and wait. At this point, the exorcist also realized that he had been tricked. He threatened the ghostly family leader to hand over Lucy or else he would let the whole family burn to ashes. Usually a weak ghost boss was tough for once, and sacrificed his family's chance of reincarnation for Lucy's safety. In the end, Jimin found her daughter under the guidance of a little ghost. She hurriedly went up to check if her daughter was okay. Although this was not what Jimin wanted, Hyeon still drove her away because of this. She didn't want Jimin to appear next to her child again, and Jimin could only keep apologizing. After Hyeon left, she apologized to Jaeho. Jaeho wanted to comfort Jimin, but it seemed like everything he said was wrong. Jimin, who was feeling very down, found Jun, and only Jun could understand Jimin's plight. Jimin felt that her return this time was a mistake and it was completely different from what she expected. Although she didn't fight for anything, her presence disrupted the peaceful lives of many people and brought endless trouble to everyone. She even asked Jun if she could take back the remaining 10-odd days. Jimin thought about dying again right now so that she wouldn't cause so many people trouble because of her existence. The ghost saw that Jimin had come and asked her how she had been in the human world. At that moment, Jimin suddenly felt that being a ghost was actually pretty good, at least at that time. She didn't have so many worries and there wasn't so much backstabbing. Jaeho settled his daughter down and thought about what had happened today. He then realized that Jimin had suffered the most today. Jaeho, as a man caught between two women, had too much helplessness. At this time, Hyeon was sitting on the sofa crying very sadly. Jaeho wanted to comfort her. However, Hyeon lost her temper with Jaeho. Hyeon thought that if there was a problem with someone else's child, the father would definitely blame the mother. But Jaeho never did. It was because in his heart, there was still Jimin, because Jimin was Lucy's mother. Hyeon had worked hard for 5 years to take care of the children. She quit her job and cut off all contact with the outside world. She knew it was difficult to be a stepmother, so she did her best to be perfect and not let outsiders gossip. But even with all her hard work, she still couldn't get into her husband's heart. Deep down inside Jaeho, there was always a door, and the only person who could enter that door was Jimin. Hyeon could accept all of this. She firmly believed that time could change everything. One day, she would be able to move Jaeho and open the door in his heart. But today Jaeho told her that Jimin, who had been dead for 5 years, had unexpectedly returned, and now she was the nanny who picked up and dropped off the children. Hyeon had long noticed that the nanny looked a lot like Jimin, but she had never thought that the dead could come back to life. Hyeon kept telling herself that it was impossible. If Jimin came back, then all her hard work over the past 5 years would have been for nothing. Wouldn't he be taking everything she had worked so hard to build and giving it to Jimin? Hyeon locked herself in her room and thought for the whole night, but she couldn't think of a solution to the problem. In the morning, she was about to send her child to kindergarten and found Jaeho sitting in the doorway of the room. He had also not slept all night. Hyeon didn't want to deal with Jaeho. She was the most aggrieved right now. She wasn't afraid that Jimin had resurrected and taken her place. It was that she had always regarded Jimin and Mikyoung as her best friends. Jaeho was the person closest to her. Now they had teamed up to lie to her, and she has become the last fool to know the truth. Hyeon asked Jaeho to give her some time. She has to think about what path to take in the future. Jimin, who has returned home, also feels very self-blame. If she cannot find the child, she really does not know how to explain to Hyeon and Jaeho. Mom is also constantly blaming dad for not being able to watch the child properly. Mikyoung knows that Jimin's time is running out, so she takes her out and has a crazy time. When she returns home one night, her parents have already prepared a candlelit dinner. Since Jimin's return, her parents have been happy every day. Facing her parents in their 60s and thinking about her 5-year-old daughter, Jimin suddenly felt a strong desire to live. She didn't want to die. She wanted to embrace everything in this world that should belong to her. She found Jun and asked what to do next, but Jun told her that it was now impossible to truly resurrect her, because the exorcist had destroyed her physical body. Once the 49-day period was up, Jimin would once again become a ghost. Jaeho prepares to go back into the operating room to try again, but when faced with the patient, he runs away. Jimin is at the hospital with her mother for a checkup. She hears the nurses talking. She knows that Jaeho's illness has returned. Jimin quickly runs to the corner of the stairs. This place is very familiar to her, because just like then, every time she has an attack, she will come here. Jimin has been a ghost for 5 years and can't remember how many times Jaeho has cried here. Every time she came here, Jaeho was in excruciating pain. Now, Jimin could finally comfort Jaeho. At that moment, Jaeho finally let go of the pent-up guilt and self-blame that had built up over the past 5 years. Seeing Jaeho come out of the darkness, the former director was also very happy. He even specially asked Jaeho out to apologize. If he hadn't insisted that Jaeho operate on the rich first, Jimin would not have missed the best opportunity for resuscitation. Fortunately, Jimin has now been resurrected and he can finally let go of all this. Mikyung always drowns her sorrows in alcohol every day and talks nonsense again. She told her husband that Jimin really wants to live, but in a few days she will die again. At this time, Jaeho came up from behind and asked what she was talking about. Mikyung had no choice but to tell him the truth. The current Jimin is only half human and half ghost. She can only remain in the world forever if she finds her position before death within 49 days. But Jaeho had already married Hyeon, and someone else had taken the place of that wife. Jimin did not want to break up this happy family, so she preferred to leave quietly. Now more than 30 days have passed, and Jaeho is still in the dark. If he hadn't overheard Mikyung and her husband's conversation, I'm afraid he would have had to wait until Jimin died again before learning the secret. Jaeho couldn't wait to find Jimin and ask her why she had done this. In fact, they were very much in love, but fate played a cruel joke on them. A car accident separated them forever. Jimin lingered on Earth for a long time, reluctant to leave. Jaeho married Hyeon, but his heart still belonged to Jimin. Now that Jimin has returned from the dead, there is no place for her in this world. Jimin doesn't blame Jaeho. She just wants to quietly finish the rest of her journey. After the two parted, Jaeho walked on the road all night. Although his heart had already leaned towards Jimin, he never knew how to tell Hyeon. Now Hyeon was also very sad. Looking at the family photo on the table, she had a feeling that those happy times would gradually drift away from her. Lucy heard her mother's crying and came running over. She comforted her mother, telling her not to cry. Nothing is unsolvable. Hyeon took Lucy in her arms and told her mother not to cry. In fact, no one knows how Hyeon has been living these past 5 years. No one knows how much she has suffered. No one knows how much she has given. But no one could have imagined that this would be the outcome. After dawn, Jaeho, finally returned. Unable to bear the thought of hurting Hyeon, he simply left their family photo on the table. Hyeon of course understood the meaning behind Jaeho's actions, but her heart was in turmoil. She decided to go for a walk and return to give Jaeho an answer. Hyeon walked out of the house only to find Jimin right outside the door. Because of a man, they went from being friends to becoming sworn enemies. It was supposed to be a duel with one winner and one loser, but Jimin kept apologizing to Hyeon. She was truly grateful to Hyeon. Over the past 5 years, Hyeon had treated Jaeho and the children well, and Jimin had seen it with her own eyes. She told Hyeon that she had come back this time to see the children and would leave in a few days. She had planned to leave without a trace, but she hadn't expected to be discovered. So Jimin feels very guilty. She begs Hyeon not to be angry with Jaeho. It's all her fault. She left a few days ago and will never come back. Hyeon was going to scold Jimin, but how could she when she was facing such a kind woman? She really hoped that Jimin could be a bit more malicious. That way, she would have a reason to hate her, but Jimin didn't even give her that chance. Her words also made Hyeon think a lot. Although Jimin repeatedly made it clear that she had not come back this time to break up her and Jaeho, Hyeon still insisted on her decision, and after returning home, she proposed divorce to Jaeho. Facing Hyeon's choice, Jaeho did not try to stop her. In fact, separation was not Hyeon's original intention. It was just that she was too kind-hearted. She believed that Jaeho originally belonged to Jimin. She had occupied him for 5 whole years. Now that Jimin had returned, it was time for him to go back to his original owner. Jaeho knows that this is unfair to Hyeon, but if he chooses between the two women, he will hurt one of them, because he has already felt guilty for Jimin's death for 5 years, so this time he wants to make up for it. Although both of them have too much reluctance, but I'm afraid only tears can represent how helpless they are. After Hyeon left, Jaeho brought his daughter to find Jimin. He was going to take the mother and daughter out for a fun day. Watching his daughter and Jimin laughing and chatting, Jaeho's heart suddenly felt much better. He even began to fantasize about the three of them living a happy life together. At that moment, a woman wearing a black trench coat walked past. Lucy shouted "Mommy" and chased after her. Jimin then realized that deep down inside, Lucy only had Hyeon as her mother. No one could ever replace that position. After dropping Jimin off at home, Jaeho persuaded her to quit her job at the kindergarten and use this time to cultivate a relationship with the child. First, she should get back her position as a mother. However, Jimin said that it was unnecessary. She was already content to spend the day playing with the child. Then she told Jaeho what Jun had said. There is no longer a physical body for her on Earth, so she will never have the opportunity to be resurrected. If she must remain alive, then Lucy will become a medium and be able to see ghosts for the rest of her life. The child is a part of Jimin's life. Jimin has stayed on Earth for 5 years because of the child. Now she wants her child to pay such a heavy price to bring her back to life. Jimin would never do the same. These words made Jaeho collapse instantly. He wanted to hurt Hyeon to bring back Jimin, but he didn't expect to end up sacrificing his own daughter. Jaeho told Jimin not to worry and think carefully about whether there was any other way, but Jimin shook her head. She could not use her child to exchange for her own resurrection. After sending Jaeho away, Jimin went out for a walk with her mother. Her mother told her something strange. 2 years ago, one day, She passed by this park and accidentally discovered Lucy playing here, so she sat down and secretly watched Lucy. She thought it was just a coincidence, but from the next day onwards, every day at this time, Hyan would bring Lucy here, and every day, she stayed later than she went back. One day, her mother stayed in the park until 10 o'clock. Unexpectedly, they stayed until 10 o'clock too. After listening to her mother's description, Jimin guessed that this was something Hyan did on purpose. It must be that she recognized her mother, so she brought Lucy here every day. Hyan just wanted her mother to see her child more. Her kindness once again made Jimin feel guilty, so Jimin decided to do something for Hyan before she died. That day, Jun kept kneeling before the Buddha. She just asked the heavens to tell her why. Among so many unjust souls in the world, only Jimin was resurrected. Jun knelt from day to night, and finally moved the heavens. She followed the prompts to the Buddha hall. Among the many wishing tablets, she found No. 638. On the 1,000 Wishes tablet, it was written, "I am willing to trade the rest of my life for a reunion with my daughter." Only then did Jun understand that Jimin's resurrection was not due to any so-called heavenly favor. Rather, it was something her mother had begged for 5 years. Ever since Jimin's death, her mother had come to the Buddha every day to pray. Jun thought her mother was praying for her daughter's soul to be released. Unexpectedly, she has been begging the heavens to let her see her daughter one last time. It was her mother's sincerity that moved the heavens, and Jimin was able to come back from the dead. Jun handed Jimin the wishing slip and told her the real reason for her resurrection. Jimin felt remorseful after learning the truth. It was her mother who had raised her with great difficulty and given her a second life, but after she was resurrected, she devoted herself to her daughter. Jimin didn't even have time to cook a meal for her mother or have a serious chat with her. If it wasn't for Jun's reminder, she was afraid that she would leave again with regrets. When she was resurrected, Jimin kept wondering if this was a reward or a punishment. Now she understood that this was a gift for herself. 5 years ago, in the accident, she had left this world without saying goodbye to anyone. This 49-day vacation was meant for her to say goodbye to the people around her, but she had never treasured it. Seeing that there was not much time left, Jimin prepared to make the most of the time she had left so that she would not leave this world with regrets. After returning home, she began tidying up her room. Her mother suddenly walked in. Seeing Jimin packing her things, her heart felt a sudden stab of pain. In the days since Jimin had returned, she and her father had been having the same dream every night. In the dream, Jimin repeatedly said goodbye to them. Jimin told her mother that even if she left one day, her soul would always be with you. Jimin's mother, awakened by a nightmare, finds her daughter still in her arms. She seems to realize something, but since Jimin doesn't say anything, she doesn't want to ask. All she can do now is cherish the time they have together. Jaeho can't accept the fact that Jimin will die again. He comes to see Jimin early in the morning, hoping to persuade her to change her mind and stay. But Jimin's attitude is very firm. If she could give up her life to protect the baby in her womb 5 years ago, 5 years later, how could she sacrifice her daughter's lifelong happiness just because she wanted to live? Jaeho saw that he couldn't persuade Jimin, so he went to the funeral home. He thought that if he wanted to see Jimin again in 10 days, he would have to come here. He couldn't help but burst into tears. Jaeho didn't understand why. If heaven had sent Jimin back, it would take her away again. Soon, his crying attracted Jun. From their conversation, he guessed that this woman was Jimin's husband's medium. Jaeho felt as if he had grabbed a straw to save his life. He prayed to Jun to save Jimin. Jun said that if he wanted Jimin to come back to life, he would have to sacrifice his child. Despite Jaeho's desperate pleas, it was useless. He could not change Jimin's fate of dying. Now Hyan also understood, because no matter how hard she tried, she could never enter Jaeho's heart. If that was the case, why did she have to be someone else's substitute? Looking at the wedding photo of her and Jaeho on the wall, Hyan silently said goodbye to the 5 years of relationship. After dropping the child off at kindergarten for a while, she was ready to leave this home that she loved and hated at the same time. The sensible Lucy also noticed that her mother had been in a bad mood recently. On the way to kindergarten, she took out a band-aid and pasted it on her mother's back of her hand, and kept blowing air into her hand with her mouth. The young child could not distinguish the difference between internal and external injuries. She thought that band-aids could heal all wounds, but she could never heal her mother's broken heart. Jimin arrived at the kindergarten and found that the child had not only arrived early that day, but was also vomiting. She quickly picked up the child and ran to the hospital. Fortunately, the child only had acute enteritis and was not in any danger. Hyan, after learning the news, hurriedly ran to the hospital. She was finally relieved to see that the child was fine. She had wanted to stay at the hospital to take care of the child, but now that the child has its own mother by its side, what is the role of this stepmother? Hyan thought to herself that perhaps the best option would be for her to leave. Just as she was preparing to make a desolate exit, Jimin chased after her. Jimin said that he would soon pass away. The child and Jaeho cannot do without you. In fact, Jaeho has always liked you. No one else has noticed. but I know it in my heart. It was only then that Hyan realized that she had wronged Jaeho and Jimin. She tried to ask Jimin if there was no other way to stay. Hyan has always been kind. If she were to sacrifice her happiness now to bring back Jimin's rebirth, she would definitely not hesitate for a second. Jaeho, who had heard the news, rushed to the hospital. By then, Jimin had already left. Hyan called Jaeho outside to prepare for the end of their things. Jaeho explained that it was all because of his guilt towards Jimin. It was precisely because Jimin had left the world without warning that Jaeho remembered that he had not been good enough to her. Why couldn't he have let her win more often? The reason Jaeho was so considerate to Hyan was simply that he didn't want to lose her again like Jimin. Jaeho definitely could not afford to have such a regret in his life again. It was only then that Hyan understood Jaeho's intentions. It was worth it to have waited for such words after 5 years of hard work. Hyan told Jaeho to accompany Jimin on her last journey. They could discuss their divorce later. In the few remaining days, Jimin stayed by her mother's side. From time to time, she took out old things and threw them away. After seeing this, her mother seemed to suddenly remember something. She asked Jimin if she had always been by her side. Jimin felt a great sense of relief after pouring out her heart to her mother. At this moment, the knot that her mother had been struggling with for 5 years was finally untied. The people Jimin would have to say goodbye to in the future were her husband and daughter. They made a date with Mikyung's family of 6 to go camping in the wild. The two families laughed and joked as if this was not a death parting. Mikyung also gave Yuli a letter. It was written by Hyan to her. I don't have the courage to face you, so I wrote a letter instead. The reason I am angry is because you and Jaeho lied to me, but it also contains the sense of loss of losing you soon. I really appreciate being able to become friends with you. I hope we can have a good time for the rest of the days. Don't worry about Lucy. I will do my best to take care of her. Seeing Hyan say this, Jimin can finally rest assured and go. In this world, the person she is least worried about is Jaeho and the child. Now that Hyan is taking care of her, she finally feels relieved. In the evening, Jaeho and Jimin sat together for the last time. Although Jimin was leaving the next day, she was not afraid, and Jaeho was no longer sad because they both knew that although they would be apart in the future, their hearts would always be together. This feeling may seem like love or even beyond love, and it may seem like family, but it is even stronger than family. This feeling, I'm afraid, can only be known by themselves. The two embraced deeply for the last time, encouraging each other to live well in the other world. The next day, Jimin said goodbye to her daughter for the last time. The young Lucy did not know that this was a parting for life. She still couldn't fully understand the concept of a mother, but ever since she could remember, she had seen Jimin by her side, and she had long since considered Jimin a part of her life. Jimin had endured 5 years of hardship to be reunited with her, and she could hear Lucy call her mommy with her own ears. She felt that everything she had done was worthwhile. Jimin's last person to say goodbye to was herself. Jun handed her the mirror she had prepared in advance, and soon it was time to leave. Jimin walked silently towards the cherry blossom tree. If 5 years ago she left with regrets, then this time she had no regrets. During her time back, she helped all her loved ones resolve their problems. She also made sure that they had no regrets with each other. This was the true meaning of Jimin's return. Life is short. One day, we may be parted forever, so we must always treat the people around us well. Don't wait until the day of regret. You may want to give, but there will be no chance.